Hello, you're very welcome along. And finally, it's here. The Matchbook World Cup podcast is live. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by the trio that will be joined throughout the tournament of Adrian, Clarke, Miguel, Delaney, and Mark O'Hare. Before we get into exactly what we're going to cover today, Mark, I'll hand over straight to you. I think people are interested in this. Like, what is a typical Mark O'Hare day during the World Cup? Because there's going to be up to 4 games on pretty much most days for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. A typical day. Well, the first 4 games, or the 4 games, and every game is going to be bookmarked off. Don't disturb me during those 2 hours. That's already in the diary, so everybody knows that, including the missus. And yeah, I guess the early start means it's going to be an even earlier start to a normal day. So get up and start prepping and start planning really for the fixtures ahead.
What's your pre-match, Mark? What's your pre-match meal?
Yeah, I'd be lucky to have one, to be fair, Adrian, and the way things are going. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the games take priority, and then you try and work around that, really. So, prepping where you can, that'll be morning and evening. I think there's about an hour in between matches during the games as well. So, there is a little bit of time, but yeah, it's going to be pretty intense.
Yeah, Adrian, yourself, are you going to try and get all games in? Or are you going to take a day off where you just say no football, or kind of see how it goes?
I've got them all in the diary, so Mrs. Clarke knows that there's a strong possibility I'm not around. But yeah, there'll be a little bit of negotiation with 2 small children. There'll be the odd pick up here and there. I'll have to just I might have to watch some of the games on delay an hour later or something like that, but I won't be missing any. Yeah, that's for sure. We got to keep on top of it, haven't we? We'd be talking a lot about the World Cup over the next few weeks. I've also got other work to do, so I'm gonna have to, those hours in between are going to be absolutely precious.
Yeah, and Miguel, you're traveling over there. For those, I guess, people are always sort of interested in reporters and typical days over there. It's only 1 game a day you're allowed to cover, or how does it work? Given that the games are so close to each other, you could probably cover 2.
No, yeah, I mean, you could do 2. I think. So at the moment, I've only got 1 day where I'm doing a double, which is the 3rd day. It was supposed to be the 2nd day, doing the opening game, and now all of this is actually subject to. So I'm basically flying in a few hours. All of this is subject to what the travel situation in Qatar is like. Because I think traffic could be bad. I think. Sorry, you can just hear my WhatsApp's coming through. I'll shut that down. Now they do have shuttles between games. Between venues, but so I'm doing Argentina at 1:00 Qatar time, which is 10 a.m. here on Tuesday, and then France that night, which is 10 p.m. We've got a lot of 10 p.m. games, and like I mean, yeah, with the World, I mean this for all sorts of reasons, such a World Cup with a difference, but like it's my 4th, and usually you associate, especially the group stage, with a lot of moving around. Early flights, loads of different cities, which was always one of the nice things of the World Cup, I have to say, especially when you're kind of dropped into a city or a place that you've never that you would never have been to before, or wouldn't really have probably chose to go to. But of course, there's none of that in Qatar. It's a very different World Cup experience, and a lot of it I think is going to be in media centers or traveling. And then of course, I mean, because given all the issues around the tournament, I think a lot of the kind of the match coverage will be married with coverage elsewhere as well, and seeing what's what around Doha.
Yeah, and we've already seen sort of certain TV companies getting told to move elsewhere. So it's going to be a fascinating 6 weeks. If you are watching the live stream, do give us a thumbs up, get your comments in, get involved in the show throughout the next 6 weeks. And we have something pretty exciting over the next 6 weeks as an offer to kind of tie into the World Cup. And it's basically, we're going to put Adrian, Miguel, and Mark under massive pressure here, because for new customers, if you don't have a Matchbook account, you don't even have an exchange account, and you'd like to know more about the betting exchange and betting against betting against your peers, we've got an offer of double the odds on podcast best bets up to £50. So that's double the odds. For example, if Mark O'Hare puts up an even shots, you can get it at 4.0. That's double the odds on podcast best bets. Enter the bonus code podcast. That's enter the bonus code podcast. And as I said, it's up to £50 in cash for throughout the tournament. So the guys' 3 best bets, they'll be selected, they'll be monitored, and then they'll be added to your account, and your winnings will be topped up. So very exciting, as if the guys aren't under enough pressure throughout these next 6 weeks, as I've touched on here already. So look, we'll get straight into it. We were deciding whether to cover every game, and we're just going to plow ahead. cover every game and see how we get on. And the first game is the opening game. It's the Ford Super Sunday spot on, which is weird, isn't it, to start a World Cup on a Sunday? And we'll take a look at the betting. It's Qatar currently 3.45, Ecuador 2.52. The draw is available at 3.15. Both teams to score no is the favorite here at 1.76. We'll be seeing a lot of that throughout the tournament. And the handicap sees Qatar get a quarter of a goal head start at 1.87. And I had to smile at the goal line this morning, just 2.0. And it shaded towards the under, which is amazing. So, look, Adrian, we'll kick off to you. It's the opening game of the tournament. It almost feels too easy to go with a sort of both teams to score no and unders angle. But
well, this is, as soon as I saw the fixture, I thought, well, that's a low-scoring game, or at least it feels that way. That goal line is set very low. I'm always nervous with a line of 2. I've been known to go 2.25 quite a bit over the years, but 2 is extraordinarily low. It's low for a reason, though. I mean, just look at Ecuador's recent record. Okay, this season they've played 5 matches. There's been a grand total of 1 goal. 1 goal in 5 matches. They've had 4 goalless draws and a 1-0. So that tells you that they're pretty solid at the back and that the goals have dried up massively for them. I was looking at their qualifying campaign, which is maybe slightly more relevant, and 9 of their last 12 qualifiers went under 2.5. So they're involved in a lot of low-scoring games as it is. Young, strong, fast team could produce more excitement than imagined, but in this first game, nerves, eyes of the world on them, must not lose. I think that it could be cagey, and for Qatar, the most prepared team in the competition, been together as a club side for ages. They've had so long to think about this, so long to plan for Ecuador, that I can't imagine that they won't be anything but extraordinarily well drilled, even if they lack a little bit in talent. And they're not a high scoring team anyway. They have scored in 6 of their last 7 friendlies, Qatar, but across those games, I think they only got a grand total of 9, so they sort of average a goal a game. But yeah, so here the goal line scares me off a little bit. I think it's got 0-0 or 1-0 written all over it, maybe 2-0. But I can't actually pick either way. I don't know a lot about Qatar, as none of us do. So yeah, BTTS no is the standout for me.
Yeah, Miguel, I guess many Irish fans would have watched them. I would have watched them in the Aviva, and I really want to be as kind as possible here. They were, considering the Stephen Kenny's form at the time, it was one of the worst teams we've ever played, I think, at international level. Now, I'm guessing they're going to be a lot more organised, as Adrian touched on, leading into a tournament that they will be hosting.
Yeah, and of course they've had a long camp. But from a Qatari perspective, that performance should be concerned, because obviously throughout the last few years they've gone on this long project essentially to try and introduce the classic Barcelona Guardiola approach, which should involve you imposing your game on your opposition. And Ireland are more moderate opposition, especially Ireland at that point, than a lot of the teams at World Cup. Certainly, I mean, Ecuador is a better side than Ireland. And they couldn't. Ireland completely imposed their game on Qatar. They played through them. It was exactly the sort of fixture that Kenny was waiting for. Now, of course, the nature of a World Cup, the long build-up, will change the context. But it's just hard to have any sort of faith in it, or any. I mean, and again, people might point to the example of Russia in the last World Cup, who I think were the lowest ranked hosts, maybe Bar South Africa in 2010, give or take a few places. But then this was still a Russia team with players like Golovin and a lot of European, or a lot of presence in the Champions League and the European leagues. Qatar don't have that. They have a lot of players who've been brought in over a long term that actually haven't been given full citizenship. There's an interesting angle there. I suppose it's not one we're discussing today. And it's just, it doesn't feel like the quality. Again, of course, the atmosphere of an opening game might change things. There's all that enthusiasm, but this is an opening game with a difference. And given, as Adrian mentioned, Ecuador's, it feels like the one guarantee for this game is that Ecuador aren't going to concede a goal, especially given the toothlessness of that Qatari attack. Ecuador, of course, have had their own issues, given they've had to drop Castillo from the squad. But still, I think there's a real robustness about them, as we can see in so many clean sheets. Don't necessarily score much, but my feel for the game, I mean, I think we'll come to it later on, but one of my potential correct scores, I think, is basically a 1-0 Ecuador win. I think they'll just keep it very solid. Nerves will get to Qatar as the game goes on, and Ecuador will do them. And 1-0 is actually, or has been historically, quite an opening game. I'm actually thinking of Germany, Bolivia in '94, France, Senegal 2002.
South Africa, was that 1-0 South Africa?
That was 1-1.
1-1.
Isabel got the opening goal. Then Marquez equalized for Mexico.
Yeah. But it does have those sort of unders feels. And as Miguel touched on, we do have a long shot section here towards the end of the show where predominantly the guys will be picking correct scores, I guess, anything around the 4 or 5 to 1 or 5.0 and higher. And Mark, very quickly, I know when guys aren't covering the game, we're just going to skip, but Mark, very briefly, I see someone here with a comment saying that the referees haven't been appointed yet to the games. That seems a bit baffling to me.
Yeah, surprising. I logged on Friday morning as we're talking now to see if they'd been announced yet and still hadn't got any news, which is very strange. I presumed we'd have the full first round of referees appointed by now, but still waiting.
Okay. Well, listen, we've locked in. Miguel's going for under 1.5 goals at 2.68, and both teams to score no is 1.77. There'll be a lot of selections. We'll be putting up the guys' selection on Insights as opposed to picking a podcast selection, as I'll just be all day trying to decide who to pick. So we'll move on to the big game, England versus Iran. It's Monday. It's lunchtime. You're in work. You're going to stick on this game expecting a cracker. It may not be so if you look at the betting. We'll take a look. It's England at 1.38. You can get 7.5 grand at the moment at 1.38. Iran, you can back at 13.0. The draw is available at 4.9. Both teams to score no is 1.47, and yes is 2-1 at 3.0. Iran are getting 1.25 goal head start at just over evens. More of that in a minute, and the total is 2.25 goals. So, Mark, I touched on Iran plus 1.25. I think you're kind of looking at maybe trying to get them on side at 1.5 at a decent price.
Yeah, 1.5 Iran with the start is 176. I'm happy to take that because I do think this is a banana skin for England, being the first game barely a week after they've met up after what's been quite an intense season so far. In the afternoon heat as well, if you read any sort of journalist reports so far from Qatar, they're saying how stifling hot it is, and whilst the temperatures might look reasonable, 28 to sort of 33, if you look at the feels like temperature, the humidity is very high. So, England may toil in that heat, trying to break down a very well-drilled defence that will sit back and aim to frustrate and play on the counter-attack. And I just think because of the lack of preparation time, there is scope for a few shocks in the first round of fixtures. I'm not saying England don't win this game, but I will say they will have to work very hard for it. And I'm counting on Iran to be competitive. I'm quite happy to oppose the majority of big handicaps in the first round of games, particularly this match. I kind of highlighted it from a few weeks out, really. So I've gone with that plus 175 on Iran. Plus 1.5, it means if Iran avoid defeat, we get paid out. If England win by exactly 1 goal, we get paid out. England need to win by 2 goals or more for the bet to lose. 4 years ago in Russia, England beat Tunisia 2-1 in the opener, which would be a very similar kind of match to what I'm expecting from the game against Iran. They needed a stoppage time goal from Harry Kane to win it. In 2014, they were beaten by Italy. No complaints there. In 2010, they started with a draw against the US. In 2006, they beat Paraguay 1-0. In 2002, they were held 1-1 by Sweden. In 98, they beat Tunisia 2-0, the second goal coming in the 89th minute as well. So England haven't made a habit of blowing teams away in the opening game, even if they're playing moderate opposition. In the Euros, they beat Croatia 1-0 last year at Wembley. 2016, they were held by Russia. 2012, they drew with France, lost to Portugal, held by Switzerland going back to 96. So obviously the caliber of opponents is much tougher in the Euros. But I think ultimately that what we've seen there is a kind of wide and varied list of opposing teams who have given England tough times in their first game. And, just one opening tournament win by 2 goals or more in 12 attempts now going back to 96 is the record for England. And, of course, most of those past tournaments mean precious little. But I think in terms of Gareth Southgate here, we've got a coach who's renowned for his conservative approach, his pragmatism. And I think this will be a case of just get the job done, move on, try and preserve yourselves as much as you possibly can in this weather. And for Iran, it's about being as solid as you possibly can, surviving the match and providing a threat on the counter-attack, which they will have. Taremi is available, and Asmoon has been part of it as well, which is a big plus for them too. So they've got two quality options in forward areas. Midfield's not bad either, a little bit workmanlike, but there is quality in that team. And I kind of go back to 4 years ago under Carlos Queiroz. Just ask Spain and Portugal how they got on against Iran. They were really, really tested. So I'm not expecting it to be breezy for England.
Yeah, and if you haven't caught our outright preview, it's still available there in all the usual places, and I won't ruin too much of it, but Mark is very pro Iran in terms of potentially qualifying from the group. Miguel, a couple of unders played from you. It again, I was saying to Sage, it almost seems too easy. Is this going to be the whole tournament now under 1.5 goals? Stock bet, let's go.
As you were mentioning in the main preview, and as Marcus touched on there, the one caveat to all of this is just because of the abrupt start to the tournament, I think there could be surprises. But that said, I don't think there's going to be any surprise about Iran. I think this is going to be a dog of a game for England.
Well, you said that 6 months ago.
Yeah, as Mark was saying there, they made it very difficult for Portugal and Spain in the last World Cup. Only knocked out by a point. That was a little bit more forward thinking than in 2014. I was at the game Argentina-Iran when Messi basically had to save Argentina with I think it was a 93rd minute winner from distance. And it was just basically Argentina so struggled to get beyond this kind of mass phalanx in the 18-yard box. I think it'll be similar for England. And it's why Southgate's approach is going to be very interesting. I mean, this would not seem the sort of game to play three at the back, unless it's three at the back with the wing backs actually as attackers, with Saka as a kind of almost as a forward from wing back rather than actually playing in wing back in the tactical sense. Also one where I think Southgate will need to draw on his trickier players like Saka, like Grealish to kind of create those openings in tight spaces. But I could just see it one of those where England, I do think England will win, I have to say. I mean, I was actually just looking at kind of some of the prospects. I was kind of torn between under 1.5 because it does feel like it could be a classic 1-0, a Kane penalty or something, or else an England win, which I am pretty confident about, but low scoring. So England under 2.5. But both of those are not badly priced.
Yeah. Mark's laughing because just before he came on air, or Miguel and joined us, he said it's going to be a 1-0 England 86 minute. Adrian, I don't want to spend too long on this, but Miguel made a good point. It's hard to know if it's going to be a back four or back five for England, and the more you look into it, the more confused you get, I guess. I guess at this game, it's probably a back four.
I would see. I'd get that extra forward player on the pitch. Obviously, they've got two dangerous attackers around on the counter, so that might play into Southgate's thinking. But if we do go wing backs, then like you say, I think it could be one where you can afford to put proper wingers out there. But it's not something that Gareth Southgate's really used that often. But yeah, I'd concur with the guys. I mean, Iran's record, 10 of the last 14 games have been under 2.5. England have stopped scoring, haven't they? I know that they had the 3-3 kind of a wild game with Germany, but before that, they had failed to score in 4 of their previous 5, which was really alarming. So not in great shape, feel a bit underprepared. It's going to be a struggle, I think. But if England, you've surely got to back England to beat Iran. Got Harry Kane at the top of the pitch. You know, he's someone likely to pop up for sure. A lot of talent there. So yeah, I would expect us to win, but it's going to be a grind. I went for the slightly safer England and under 3.5 goals. It's still 1.81, so it's definitely backable. But England and under 2.5, given what we've all said, would appeal to.
Yeah, I think if I was leaning to one, I do like that. England under 3.5, 1.81 is probably a decent price. But yeah, we'll move on to the third game. It's Senegal versus the Netherlands. And again, there were a lot of pro-Senegal angles with the podcast. Aware that Sadio Mane might miss the bits of the tournament, but now it's been confirmed, obviously, he's missing the whole tournament. And now you can see the prices in the match odds here. And it still looks a massive price in Senegal. 7.2 currently, with the Netherlands at 1.61. And the draws available at just over 3-1. At 4.1. Both teams to score no. Again is shaded towards no at 1.76. Senegal are getting 1 goal start at 1.87, and the total is 2.25 goals. Miguel, this is sort of breaking your trends here. You're kind of seeing maybe more of an exciting game. Both teams to score is currently around that 2.22 mark, and you're kind of looking there.
Yeah, I actually would have gone for it as one of the kind of almost under the radar games of the group, or potential games of the group stage. had Mane been fit. It's a really unfortunate situation. That, I mean, it's always I mean, obviously, it's quite sad when any player kind of has his great dream affected. But I think it's always just more pronounced when it's the big player from one of the mid-tier nations, or one of those players. And it's the same with Son in Korea, that really lifts their team, and also that everyone in the team and the country looks to. And it usually has a psychologically deflating effect. On the other side, then, there's, of course, I mean, they've obviously included Mane, but these situations, they usually have a history of not working out that well. That said, Senegal, I think, the strongest African team, they would have been my pick to go through this group had it not been for the injury. I think now it's almost a bit of a toss-up between them and Ecuador now. But I think this has one of the feel of one of those, especially with the way the Dutch are playing. I mean, it's not. I mean, Van Gaal's an interesting figure himself, given that he's gone through an evolution. He used to be the ultimate 4-3-3 purist. Now he's much more pragmatic, which is interesting given his famously robust character. But I think it has the feel of a game that'll open up, especially after the opening two, if we think low-scoring matches. Just the feel of this, I think Senegal will, from everything, from what we've seen from Cisse as a manager, I think he's the longest-serving manager in the tournament now. What we've seen from him from the last World Cup, they'll go for Holland. They won't be afraid. And I can see this being maybe one of these games is a little bit of a reprieve for people after the opening two.
Well, Adrian, I have to admit, I was a bit relieved looking in the document games. Like, my God, am I looking forward to this World Cup? But you're also in agreement. Both teams to score 2.22.
I think it'll be a better game. Yeah, I mean, most of the Senegal squad plays in Europe's Big Five leagues. You know, a lot of decent experience, a lot of talent there. Certainly, even though we haven't got Sadio Mane, which is a great shame, there's a lot of other good players, a lot of talented young forward players that are capable of hurting a Holland team that is decent, but nothing special in my opinion. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk's not had a very good season at all. It'll be interesting to see how his performances stack up at the World Cup finals. He certainly hasn't looked the rock that he usually is. I think that out wide as well, Senegal might target the wing backs, because under Van Gaal, the wing backs are really, really important. They'll fly forward, but that might leave gaps down the sides for someone like Ismail Assar to go and hurt them on counters and stuff and transitions. So it'll be interesting. I think Senegal are capable of scoring, basically, given their talent pool. Given the African Cup of Nations is always quite dull, a little bit low scoring. But when you see African sides at major tournaments, they're often quite dashing and a little bit more adventurous and kind of unpredictable. And I'm hoping to see that from Senegal here. But Holland have scored in their last 15 matches, so they've always got goals in them. They had a blank, I think it was against Czech Republic, and then they'd scored in their previous 12. So 27 of 28 matches, Holland have scored, or the Netherlands have scored. So you've got to fancy them to get at least one here. And I think that Senegal are capable too. So yeah, I think it'll be a tight. I think it could easily be a score draw or a narrow win for Holland, but maybe with both teams scoring. So yeah, I'm going BTTS as well.
Yeah, Mark, the 7.2 on Senegal and the match odds did jump up to me a small bit. There's also the pressure of Netherlands having not qualified for the last World Cup to perform in their opening game. And as Miguel touched on with Louis van Gaal, going with that back three is kind of divided opinion there as well. So you're kind of leaning towards a pro-Senegal angle here, despite Mane being out for the tournament. Yeah,
well, Memphis Depay is missing for the Netherlands in the opening game as well, which I know doesn't cancel itself out with Mane's absence, but it's a blow because you're looking at a Dutch team who will be spearheaded by Bergwijn and Janssen, who Premier League fans will know aren't exactly the most clinical of pairings. So, yeah, I just looked at that Dutch price of now it's 1.61. Feels short to me for an opening group game in a competitive contest. And I know there's quality elsewhere, and I really do back Louis van Gaal as a head coach. But yeah, Senegal aren't easy meat. They're a team who are incredibly strong and solid defensively. They've got an abundance of high-class performers in key areas of the pitch who will make life difficult for the Dutch. And I think they have got a sprinkling of talent in forward areas still. And I think if you take Depay out of the equation, you look at the sort of options in forward areas, there's not a massive amount of difference between the two teams. So the late afternoon kickoff as well, should suit Senegal in terms of the climate, in terms of the conditions. Dutch the first game. I talk about the fact that favourites could easily fall early on, and despite being unbeaten in 15 under Van Gaal, they have been giving chances away. They haven't been keeping clean sheets often, the Dutch. So if you do fancy Senegal to score, then I don't fancy them to get beaten heavily. So Senegal +1, which is now I think 187. Should give us a good run for our money, really. You need the Dutch to win by 2 goals or more to see the bet lose. Senegal have lost by more than 1 goal just once since 2017. And I know the majority of those matches have come against African opposition. But even still, it's a formidable record. And just on the AFCON, teams are very, very defensive in that competition. I don't think it helps Senegal in the final third. It's coming up against deep line defences 3 times a week. This will be much different for them. They'll get much more opportunity to flourish in bigger spaces and opportunities to run in behind. So I think the AFCON form can be a bit of a red herring for African teams at times.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. It is on the drift 1.87 currently. So Michal DC of the Horse Racing Podcast is going against you. It's his bet of the day. So we'll see who wins out on that one there with the 1.0 Asian handicap. But as I said, if you are listening, Matchbook Insights will be there where all the lads' selections will be put up there. Matchbook Insights post recording. So look, I think Monday's a pretty good day of football, and it's going to end with USA versus Wales, which is a massive game for Wales. They just seem to qualify for every tournament. And as an Irishman watching on, we were there with them a few years ago. I don't know what happened. Some couple of players came along, potentially world-class ones, where our world-class ones went to another country. I don't know why I'm down this rabbit hole, so I'll move on fairly swiftly. Wasn't intended at all. USA are currently backable at 2.64. Wales are 3.3, and the draw is available at just over 2-1 at 3.1. Both teams to score again shaded towards the at 1.77. The Wales can be back drawn about at 2.24 with the US in the same market at 1.78, and the goal line is 2.0 shaded a bit towards the under at 1.94. So yeah, Adrian, it's with this angle, and I think we won't give away too much of the selections here, but given if you listen to the outright preview, it's going to probably be an anti-USA pick here, given that their time is probably maybe 4 years from now.
Yeah, we're not huge fans, I don't think, of the USA. They could obviously make us look silly over the coming week or two. But yeah, I just don't think at both ends of the pitch they're particularly strong. You don't see an obvious goal threat. And at the back, certainly they've got their fragilities. Even in goal, I mean, I don't know I'm not sure if Matt Turner is going to be the number one or not. I think he played the most recent games. He's had injury issues. And even though he's an Arsenal player, he hasn't been wholly convincing, I'd say. He's looked a little bit edgy in the games where he's appeared, and he's not had much football. So if he is the number one, that's something that Wales might look to target. And I just think Wales have the stronger forwards by quite a long way, actually. In Gareth Bale, obviously Kiefer Moore, who I think is a big threat. Brennan Johnson, who's new to the scene, but a really exciting player. Harry Wilson is a potential match winner. Not even mentioned Dan James or Aaron Ramsey. They've got players that I think can hurt a very mediocre American rearguard. I think in midfield, the States is probably stronger. I think that's Wales's weak spot. I think they've got some good players in there. Tyler Adams and Aronson buzzing around. But yeah, all in all, I see this as a very even match that Wales should shade because they've got more firepower. So therefore, Wales on a very small handicap, that quarter goal handicap, means that if they avoid defeat, we're in profit. And I think that makes complete sense here. I could see a draw, but if anyone's going to win it, I would back Wales.
Yeah, Miguel, you're in agreement with that bet, and it's probably one of those where maybe just take a bit safety first, Wales quarter of a goal, and maybe see how the opening game of the tournament plays out with these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually almost unfortunate that it's these two groups that are A and B, because I think the rest of the tournament isn't like this. I think Wales have been a counter-attacking side. Now, to be fair, there is, I think, more of an adaptability to Wales in general. They're probably one of the more flexible international sides, and that they're quite clever in how they can switch from counter-attacking against kind of the bigger teams and being able to kind of impose themselves, which I think explains a lot of their consistency over the last few years. USA, I mean, the thing about USA is there is actually a core of a bit of talent in this team, but they just haven't impressed for the last 2 years. I know there's huge questions about Berhalter. And again, I'm prepared to be proved wrong on this, but all signs, but I think they could actually finish bottom of the group, have a bit of a kind of a France 98 tournament to them, or 2006, I think 2006 they finished bottom of their group with a point. Actually, they drew with Italy, the eventual champions in the end. But I can see similar for them here. And yeah, I fancy Wales to actually for a professional win here, which I suppose we've all reflected in our picks.
Yeah, Mark, you're in agreement, I guess, maybe more so on the confident scale, maybe on a scale of 1 to 5. Would this be one of your more confident shouts, or is it just a case that, similar to what I was saying to Miguel, you want to see how the opening game plays out?
Kind of in between. I'm confident that I think the prices are wrong. Maybe, I mean, I'll be proved right or wrong next week. But in my ratings, I've got Wales ahead of the US. But in terms of the market, they've rated the Americans the more likely to progress and the more likely to win this match, which I would like to disagree with. For all the reasons the guys have outlined, really, there's not a huge amount I can add extra to it. But the Americans will be awkward opponents for any team in this group just because of that midfield and whichever makeup Berhalter goes with. It's normally 3 from 4, but you've got McKennie, Adams, Aronson, and Musa of Valencia. There's huge amounts of energy and ball playing quality, it should be said, in that midfield. A really sort of strong physical challenge. They've got huge pace from fullback positions too, but ultimately they're very weak at centre half and centre forward, which is where games tend to be won and lost. And I think that's where Wales can thrive, because I do like the system. Quite often 3 centre halves and wing backs, but as Miggs was saying, the forward line or the approach in the midfield forward and going on from that can be very, very adaptable, where he does start Kiefer Moore for that physical presence, or even Gareth Bale as a false 9. There's plenty of ability in those forward areas, and in tight matches, you want someone who's capable of the spectacular. So I'd be surprised if Wales lost this, and therefore I think to be able to back them with a quarter goal start at 175 is quite appealing, to be honest. It was one of my favourite bets of this show.
Okay. A good and confident play there from the guys, and agreement, which is always nice as well. Argentina versus Saudi Arabia. I'm skipping a couple ahead. It's Denmark versus Tunisia is the next game we're going to cover. And I'll take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. You can currently back Denmark. We'll get the prices up there in a second. But you can currently back Denmark. I might go to you actually first on this, Adrian, and we'll get prices up there in a minute. Denmark being one of the stories of the Euros, I think post World Cup, they were definitely one of the teams that you'd be looking, or post Euros, definitely one of the teams you'd be looking at a potential World Cup pick here. Just quickly at the betting, Denmark can be back at 1 to 2, which is currently available at 1.5. Tunisia are at 9.0, 8 to 1 currently, and the draw is available at 4.4. Both teams to score. No is 1.66, the favourite in that, with yes at 2.4. And Tunisia are getting a 1-goal head start in the Asian handicap at 2.14, and the goal line is 2.25. So yeah, Adrian, with you, is this another game that you're probably looking towards the unders here?
Yeah, well, it's the early kickoff, so it's going to be blazing hot. Not going to suit Denmark at all. Tunisia, obviously more accustomed to that. They are known, and the head coach, I think, for Tunisia, Kadri, is known as being a pretty boring, defensive-minded coach that sort of focuses on negating the opposition. And I think that they'll look to do that here. And it could be a really slow-paced match, in my opinion. I think that the Danes are a good team, and they should win the game, I guess. But a little bit like England against Iran, it might not be easy. And I do think that Denmark might be a team that's better when they're the underdog to some degree, where they don't have the bulk of the ball and they can look to pick teams off and be competitive and then break on them. This won't be that. I think they'll probably be asked to have a lot of the ball. And they have struggled. I looked at in their qualifying, I think they struggled really bad against the Faroe Islands, only beat them by a goal to nil, had all of the ball in that game, and it was a bit tense in the end. So yeah, I think they should have enough to beat Tunisia, although Tunisia did beat Japan, I noticed, in one of their friendlies by 3-0. So they've got something about them. But I suspect this is going to be in the hottest part of the day, a slow game, not full of chances, that Denmark might edge. But I'm not going to hang my hat on the Danes because I could see this being a goalless draw. So I'm going to go for under 2.5 goals, which I think's still at a decent enough price.
Yeah, under 2.5, around the 1.79 mark. And Miguel, you're in a broad agreement, but you're going to bring Denmark in under 3.5 goals, which is around even money, 2.02.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Denmark just have that feel of a team that, having had the benefit of one very good campaign, maybe a little bit ahead of time for them before they were ready, you often see it with the next one. They really make that step up, which we've seen from this unbeaten run. And obviously, of course, you got the return Christian Eriksen, given everything in Euro 2020 as well. I think they're ready to make a step up. There's a real confidence about them, which is what I think it'll be. If I was basically predicting the score in this, thinking of a commanding Denmark win, but not necessarily a high scoring one. I think it'll be more likely to be something like kind of a 2-0, 2-1. Tunisia, again, another side that's been difficult to break down. They've got a history in this, the World Cup, as we saw from the last one with England as well. And again, in these sort of circumstances as well, being in the World Cup itself, I think, can often not quite change a team's approach, but accentuate certain styles of play, especially when they're against sides like Denmark, who come in so fancied, and pretty much everyone's talking about them as the dark horse. I suppose the hope for Denmark is they don't end up like a Turkey in that sense, or a Serbia. But I have a lot of confidence in Denmark in this to do the job, but not necessarily kind of really cut loose with it.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson. Jesus, I hadn't really thought of Turkey and my bets in the Euros until you brought that up, Miguel.
It's always Serbia with the World Cup.
Yeah, you mentioned Serbia as well. I go, why was I involved with them anti-posts as well somewhere along the lines? Mark, we talked a little bit off air. Denmark is a team that you like to potentially win the group, but you think they're maybe overpriced 5-2. And with the outrights, a lot of people maybe might get involved in the outrights. You maybe a little bit of caution based that they might get a tough draw in the last 16 quarterfinals, I guess.
Yeah, but just if they don't win the group, then they're on a collision course with Argentina in the last 16, which is a very, very difficult game, one of the hardest you'd say in the competition. So that's the concern really about backing Denmark outright. If they were to sort of hold France and beat the two lesser tiny teams in the group, it will come down to goal difference. You'd probably back the French to score more goals in that sense, and then it comes down to what is a tricky game. This an opening tie in the afternoon heat, as Adrian has outlined, against the Tunisia team, who will sit back in deep line blocks, aim to frustrate and rely on set pieces and counter attacks. But I'm going to back them to sort of following Miguel in really on Denmark to win under 3.5 goals. They might lack a top class centre forward, but 18 different players contribute to goals in qualification, which is they spread the load massively. They're adaptable, they're versatile. They've got the X factor of Eriksen back. They've got a strong and steady rear guard as well. I just like the price really. It sort of evens. It's a nice boost on Denmark from about 1.5 to win the game. Just wary of Tunisia's threats as well. Kazri and McSackney as well, the captain. They're wild cards who can produce moments of magic. So just to have the under 3.5 on side, just eliminates the likelihood that, or not the likelihood, but just in case Tunisia were to get a consolation, shall we say. And I don't expect Denmark to score more than 3 goals either. I think their head coach Kasper Hjulmand has already talked about the threat of Tunisia around the afternoon heat too, and it's just a case similar to England, get the job done and move on to the next match, because there'll be tougher games to come, and very rarely do first round games be settled by more than a 2-goal margin.
Yeah, and it kind of brings the 2-1 scoreline that Denmark and under 3.5 goals, 2.02. Adrian going for the under 2.5 goal mark. We'll move on to the next game. I was right in my instinct that it was Argentina versus Saudi Arabia. This is the Tuesday morning game. Mark's going to sit this one out in terms of selection, but we'll take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. in Argentina, 1.19 currently. The Saudis available at 23.0, and the draw is 8.4. Both teams have scored no is again around the 1-2 mark in some of these games, 1.52, and Saudi Arabia getting a 2-goal head start at 1.95. The goal line incidentally is 2.25, shaded a bit to the over. So yeah, Adrian, maybe back to you on this one. It's a tough one maybe to sort of find a bet. You want to kind of combine a match result and a totals angle here.
Yeah, I mean, then you've got to go with Argentina, I think, here. It's just what's the best way in. And I think when you sort of factor in the tightness of that opening game, and it's often a little bit tighter, the weather conditions and the vast contrast between the quality of these two teams, I think it means that Saudi Arabia are going to go in with a very, very defensive attitude. And I mean, it's remarkable. There's been a total of 9 goals in Saudi Arabia's last 10 matches. So it's just been 0-0, 1-0. It's like the sort of binary numbers, 1-0, 0-0, 1-1, 1-0, 0-1. It's crazy, really. They'll do well to hold Argentina to that, but they're obviously a very, very well-drilled team. They only lost 1-0 to Croatia. I noticed the other day in one of the warm-up games, they only lost 1-0 to Colombia last year, which is obviously a sort of similar style opponent to Argentina. So I don't see them getting tonked. I don't. I think if this was game 2 or game 3, certainly game 3, I would be going with Argentina and overs. But because of the nature of where it is in the fixture list, I think it might be tighter than we think. Long unbeaten run, of course, for Argentina. We know about their quality. 7 clean sheets in 8 games. I want to back Argentina to win to 0. So Argentina and BTTS no, but it comes in under 1.7. So that's a bit too skinny for us to tip up. So the next best that I can do is Argentina and under 3.5.
Yeah, Miguel, Adrian's kind of just gone completely against what you're about to put up here. So it's good to get some disagreement on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm going quite bullish again. Again, this is one of those that I think is going to be heavily influenced by the context, and it is actually why I think that preceding form can't always be a kind of a 100% or complete guide for these, because just the very atmosphere of a World Cup changes things, and the kind of that mix. And obviously, the main guide for this is Argentina's form. And while there are big questions about, given they've played so few European teams in that time, whether it's actually kind of real in terms of enough to actually go the distance in a World Cup, I think that's why it's actually almost the draw plays into Argentina's hands in that regard, in terms of a fairly soft group and probably the softest possible opening game as well. And because of that, I think they'll go in a mood. We've seen before, actually, Argentina can, not always in their opening game, but when they're opening 2 games, I'm thinking the kind of 4-0 against Greece in 94, the 4-1 against Korea in 2010, which is even under Maradona, 5-0 against Jamaica in 98. Now, all of these are obviously different Argentina's teams, but it's almost that same energy that comes from a big Argentina build-up. I think this is actually where history does have an effect on these sort of things. And I think, especially with Messi on this sort of form, and no matter about that Saudi Arabian backline over the last few months, this is a very different prospect. I think Argentina will score early and keep scoring.
Yeah, so you have a couple options here. Miguel's gone with the Argentina and over 3.5 goals at 2.9. Again, Mark's sitting this one out, and as we've said many times in the show, you don't have to have a bet in every single game here.
It's either 3-0 or 4-0, isn't it? That's where we are with our
86 minute 3-0. Mark's in the WhatsApp group.
I was just having a quick look on Matchbook just to have a look at the correct score prices. So if you are sort of unsure, if you think Argentina score 3 goals or more, Argentina to win 3-0. And you can back Argentina to win by any other home win. Basically, back them both and get your staking right. And you're basically getting about a 2.5 shot on Argentina to win 3-0 or any other scoreline, which is basically scoring 4 goals or more. So might be a smart way to go and attack it.
That sounds that sounds good to me. So back on the correct score, Mark, back in Argentina 3-0, and then by any other score, and you're getting 6-4, 2.5. Very, very, very interesting. Then correct score markets, as we've touched on before in the show, and we'll come to some correct score selections. If you are sitting down before a World Cup game, invariably an hour before kickoff in particular, you'll be getting your best value in Matchbook Bet and Exchange, given the nature of the exchange. So we'll move on to the next game, which is the Tuesday 4:00 game. It's Mexico versus Poland. We'll go to you, Mark, on this. We'll take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. Adrian's going to sit this one out. We got Mexico and Poland both at 2.9 here. That's very nice to see. We got the draw available at 3.15. Both teams to score no again is shaded favorite at 1.87. Mexico on draw no bet is small bit of difference at evens, and Poland are 1.98, and the total is a low goal line here at 2.0, but that is shaded towards the overs, Mark. So I'm guessing with your selection here, both teams to score, Mark, you think that the market's maybe underestimating these two teams going forward?
Yeah, I mean, this is a massive match, and I think both will know going into this match, they've got Argentina in their group and Saudi Arabia in their group. Saudi Arabia do represent their best opportunity to probably pick up points, but they also know that Argentina probably means they don't get any points from that game, or they probably won't. So it puts extra pressure on this game, particularly being the first match of the tournament too. So you'd assume it's 1 from 2, Argentina and one of these two to go through. And that can take us in 2 ways. We could probably see a very tight and tentative contest where fear takes over. But I'm going to be of the opposite opinion and take both teams to score at that price, because I think it's appealing enough, and I believe that the Polish front line are more than good enough to get a goal in this game. And if they do get a goal, if they do score first, it kind of forces Mexico out to play, front foot football, engage in Poland, and try and hurt them in transitions, counterattacks, or in their own sort of attacking play. So, vice versa, if Mexico score, Poland are going to be forced out. So as long as we get a goal, hopefully before half time, I think this could be a really good, interesting, exciting and entertaining game, actually, where I think both, I'm not going to say it's a knockout game, but it's not far off it being first up, considering the lay of the land in the group. So, for that reason, I just think that the variables of this match play into the prospect of being relatively entertaining. And I think the goal line is incredibly low. I don't rate this Mexican team very highly at all. They're very shy on offensive quality. I know Lozano's had a great season, so he is the sort of rabbit in the hat, really. But Poland's obvious threats are all in forward areas. They're very sort of insecure defensively too. If you look at the individuals and the collective there too, they're all pretty much past their sell-by date. So a Polish team who likes to get forward, more than good enough to score goals. Mexico are then forced to engage them. So I think safer selection is to back over 2 goals at 1.83, but the negative there is you need 3 goals or more to grab a winner, but it does cover you for the 2-0. So I do expect there to be two or more goals, and I just think as the market can't split the two teams at 2.9 each. Why not back both teams to score at 2.1? It's a nice price.
Yeah, Miguel, I guess, again, not to spoil the outright preview too much, we do want people to watch it, but Lewandowski was your pick for Golden Boot, and I think this is maybe a game for him to maybe, as Mark says, if he can get a goal before half-time, this game might liven up. Yeah,
I totally subscribe to what Mark is saying there. But also, I think what's interesting about this one is both will go in with the knowledge that this is pretty much their group, really. But when that sort of match happens this early, it can sometimes lead to a little bit of a kind of a strange standoff, which is why I think a score draw, especially given what Mark's raised about how Poland set up. I think this game is the way they play and where their strengths are, and given they've got the one world-class player on the pitch and the kind of the gravitational effect of that, I think this game is going to be totally dictated by Poland, and which basically means they'll hurt Mexico going forward, but equally you wouldn't trust them at the back, and I can see this being a score draw.
Yeah, 6.9 currently at 1-1. This seems very tempting price. All right, we'll move on to the final group game, guys. We're flying, we're getting there, and it's France versus Australia. To take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com, you can back France currently at 1.29, Australia at 13.0. The draw is available at 6.6. Both teams to score no is the favourite here once again at 1.65, and Australia are getting 1 3/4 goal head start at 1.88. The total, incidentally, is 2 3/4 goals. So, Miguel, I'll stick with you on this one. Just with France, it's a tough team to place. I think people are kind of pricing them based on previous tournaments they're missing. As Mark touched on, I actually went on to World Cup Fantasy. They've no midfielders at all. So it just seemed like a way. With this sort of opening game, Australia are probably not the opposition to maybe take advantage of that necessarily.
Yeah, we've got Rabiot there, given everything, which is quite remarkable, and there's going to have to be a bit of experimentation from Deschamps. But there's all sorts of competing factors going into this game as well, in terms of how we think about France. I mean, first of all, the defending champions now, while the precedent from the last few years has been that the defending champions go out in the next round, in all those cases, pretty much it's basically because not understandably, I suppose, they've tried to keep the spine of the previous World Cup together, and that's just led to them going stale. Now, France actually don't really have that option. And in fact, a lot of the spine from the previous World Cup were very young players because, I mean, it's the country, and really specifically the entire Paris area, has become renowned as one of the most fertile areas for football in the game. So that conveyor belt just keeps going. So there's almost been a little bit of a shake-up from that perspective. And of course, the team is dotted with so much quality. Above all, Mbappe, who will be going into this actually with a little bit to prove, remarkably to say, because his 2 Paris Saint-Germain teammates have been in better form in the club game. But even there, on the other side of that, there's this, and this is what I'm getting at, and how it's kind of so difficult to kind of get a read on France at the moment, because even on that, basically, then you've got Mbappe who want to prove a point, but then I was actually talking to someone connected to the French squad yesterday, but they feel that if you're playing Mbappe, it's got to be Giroud alongside him. But then at the other side, you can't ignore Benzema's quality. But of course, on the other side of that, Benzema's not fully fit. So the French are actually there's so much swirling around with them. And on top of that, of course, you've got the Euro 2020 campaign, which is so underwhelming. But then Deschamps is one of those coaches who does know how to rally a spirit for a tournament. But all that said, for this specific game, Australia don't have the quality, I think, to really either to surprise France or to frustrate them. And it's one of the where my instinct is for a narrow win, but to cover that, I'd go for both teams not to score, or sorry, for only one team to score, I suppose, and a French win, maybe under 2.5.
Yeah,
which is a lot higher price.
that French win on under 2.5 is about 5-2 at the moment, 3.5, which is a decent price. Adrian, for you, it's similar lines with France, I guess. It's just that little bit of people aren't quite buying into them this time around, and maybe that might suit them, I guess. And Miguel touched on some of the players they have. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean that midfield. Okay, it doesn't have the strength it usually does, but these young players, it might be their moment to shine.
Yeah.
You know, Camavinga is not a bad player, Camavinga or Toshumi, or I can't know how to pronounce his name properly, but these are two very, very talented players that might just revel in that big stage. It might give France an extra level of freshness. Certainly, give young, enthusiastic legs inside that engine room. They've got too much for Australia, surely. I think this is one of the weakest Australian teams that I can remember. You think about the last World Cup. I think they started with a game against France at the last World Cup, Australia. It was 2-1.
Yeah, three of the teams in this group are the same.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, it was 2-1 last time, but Australia didn't score a goal from open play. There are only 2 goals in the group stage before they went home early, were both penalties. And I struggle to see where the goals are going to come from this time around. They were beaten home and away by Japan in the qualifiers, pretty well beaten as well. Narrowly beat New Zealand as well. And of course, the Peru playoff was a goalless draw that went to penalties. So I don't think they can hurt France here. And surely France can score goals with Mbappe and everybody else. Usman Dembele, I think, was in terrific form as well. So he's somebody maybe to look out for that's a little bit under the radar. If I was Deschamps, I'd play him. Deschamps very quickly. He's a tournament manager, isn't he? I think that you see a lot of fluctuation in between tournaments where the motivation isn't always there for France, and we see some mixed results a lot of the time when they get to major tournaments, albeit they didn't in the last one. Deschamps can deliver. So France to win 2-0 is my pick here, which obviously you can dress up as France and BTTS no 1.87. I think that's a good value pick.
Yeah, Mark, I might throw this one to you. Get your comments in, guys, if you are listening. The French goalkeeper is the worry there. Like, I presume there's no question. Yeah, you agree, Adrian.
Lloris is not in great form, is he? Let's be honest.
No. And I presume Areola won't get in, Mark. There it will be Lloris.
Yeah, definitely Lloris. Yeah, he's not in great form, but he's still probably better than a lot of the goalkeepers at the World Cup. So he might be a weak link, but I think the French rearguard, Varane's probably going to be missing for the start of the competition, but that's where they're supremely stocked at centre half. It's unbelievable amount of quality. So you'd assume he won't have too much to do in some of the games against Australia and Tunisia, but yeah, I mean, I'm not hot on France at all in the World Cup, and I think that midfield being ripped apart is a blow. Deschamps is going back to the system that worked at the last World Cup because of the options have been limited in midfield. Benzema likely to miss this game too, but they're coming up against an Australia team who probably the worst in living memory for me, at least. Probably at least going back to the 90s. They're a million miles away from, let's say, the 2002 team. Only 2 of the squad playing Europe's top 5 leagues, and neither of them are first choice operators at Verona or Cadiz. Public mood back home is very, very low, very unexpected. The head coach, Graham Arnold, is disliked throughout Australian football. They're just coming here and very it's bad. And when you hear Graham Arnold talk about Australia, he's basically saying, yeah, we haven't got much quality. We have to rely on what is the Aussie DNA, which is to run hard and battle hard. And that's because they're bang average. They're bang average by Asian standards, as we saw through qualification. They were very fortunate to even be here. And now they're coming up against kind of the UEFA big guns. It's going to be difficult. And I'm treating this match very similarly to the Denmark match against Tunisia. I think the edge that gets to France is that Denmark are playing in the midday heat and France won't be. So it's still going to be warm, but you expect them to dominate possession. They'll make that Australian team work hard. And sure, the Socceroos will work hard. They'll provide a physical approach, but how good are they to really stop this French team? You'd expect France to at least get on the score sheet. So I did look. My immediate thought was France and BTTS no as well, but I'm going to be want to call it bold, but I'm just going to boost that price to a bigger opportunity, which is France under 3.5 goals at 2.02. First round blowouts don't happen too often. The handicap is already set at 1 3/4. So, and the goal line is not too high either. So basically, the markets are predicting a 2-0 or 3-0 French win, and I think that looks the most likely solution.
Yes, that's locked in at France and under 3.5 goals. It sounds a bit like the Irish Trapattoni there, or the Australian Trapattoni there, Miguel, talking down about his players in Australia. So Matchbook Insights is the best place to get a full recap of all the bets we've covered. As I mentioned, we'll be putting them all up there. We'll get straight to our long shot section. So this is basically, I'll stick with Mark in this one because I specifically said around the 6.0 or bigger, and Mark just couldn't resist getting in slightly under that, and I've allowed it because he's a very confident correct score. Shout, so take it away, Mark.
As confident as you can be in a correct score, but I said off air, I mean, we've already talked about it, England versus Iran. I think we've already seen this script, haven't we? It's England 1, Iran 0, and Harry Kane scores an 86th-minute penalty. So if you can give me a price on that, I'd take it. So whatever it might be. But yeah, in this instance, I'll take the 1-0 correct score for England to win. I think it's 5.4, so just under the threshold.
Miguel, from 1-0 to another, take it away.
Yeah, referenced it earlier. I think this is just from the history of the opening game, from what Qatar are as a team, from what Ecuador are as a team. I'm going for an Ecuador win to not quite stun the hosts, but take advantage of the circumstance.
Yeah, around 7.4 currently. Qatar 0, Ecuador 1. Adrian, you're going a bit more bolder, and I actually didn't realize this when I referenced the price at 6.8. I hope I didn't steal your thunder. I definitely did.
Well, you did. Yeah, you did. It's fine.
Yeah.
No one knew what was coming, so it's all good.
Yeah. Great mind.
But yes, I sat out Mexico, Poland for a reason. Yeah, because this was my long shot.
Okay.
And look, everything that the boys said fits in with my selection here. I think even Miguel said it looks like a 1 apiece. So yeah, Mexico 1, Poland 1, 6.8. I think for Mexico, obviously the context of the game is huge. It's it is a must not lose. So I think that lends itself to a close fought game. For Mexico, maybe attack is the best form of defense. I think they need to go at Poland because Poland would almost certainly score. I think they've scored in 14 of their last 16 games. They've got Lewandowski, they've got Zielinski, they've got players that can hurt Mexico. But I don't see, multiple goals here. So yeah, Mexico 1, Poland 1.
Yeah, and before we move on to best bets, we touched on the top of the show. If you don't have a Matchbook account, and particularly around the World Cup, if you want to take advantage of those correct score markets of the exchange and in best price, predominantly particularly that hour before kickoff, we do currently have double the odds on podcast best bets. That's Adrian, Miguel, and Mark's best bet, up to £50 in cash. All you do is enter the bonus code podcast, place your first bet on one of the three guys' best bets, and you'll get double the odds, up to £50 in cash. Your bet will be topped up in winnings, and full terms and conditions are available on our website, insights.matchbook.com or matchbook.com, and full T's and C's apply. Miguel, you're going bold again, so I think it will be interesting, Miguel's tactic throughout the tournament on best bets, but go on, Miguel, take it away.
I could be very, very much distorted by what we see in that first week, because I think, well, actually, I mean, again, this is something we touched on in the opening the big preview, but I think this is going to be a split tournament because as teams feel the benefit of weeks together if they survive that long. But for this, I must say, I'm quite bullish. I don't think Argentina will need to survive, and Argentina over 3.5. I really fancy a big statement from them. Everything is going in the one direction for Argentina going into their big game, right down to kind of the nature of the opposition. Even if Saudi Arabia have been defensively dogged the last year or so, I don't think they'll be able to withstand. And once Argentina get one, I think look what they did to Italy. And fair enough, it was a diminished Italy in June in the Finalissima. But there was a point in that game where Argentina could have scored a hatful, but they were just trying to create chances for Messi. I don't think we like that in a World Cup itself. I can just see this being a commanding win. So Argentina and over 3.5.
Yeah, in your face, Adrian. I think that's what Miguel's essentially saying. That best bet.
It is a borderline one. Yeah, it's Yeah, it could easily come in, and the price is good, isn't it? When you double that up, so we're talking what, you know,
Yeah,
just under
5.8,
6.
5.8.
Yeah, 5.8.
Yeah.
That's
You'd be very
decent.
tempted.
Yeah.
And you watched Saudi park the bus going, this is
Yeah.
what we're doing here. Mark, listeners won't be aware of this, but you have changed your best bet 3 times. I think it's important to full disclosure. I will rat you out, but take it away.
Stitched up. Yeah.
Cheers, Dan.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I said to you before we started recording, I'm quite happy, really. I've got 3, 4, possibly 5 options for this first couple of days, which I'm really quite happy about and confident about, really. So trying to pick and choose, and yeah, I keep kind of moving between others. But yeah, Wales plus a quarter was one, Denmark was another, but I'm going to stick with France now. Just because the kickoff time is suitable more so than it is for Denmark, and the fact it is Australia, I'm not expecting Australia to put up a huge amount, particularly in the final third where they are pretty weak. And France, despite all the issues afflicting them in terms of missing their midfield, potentially missing Varane and Benzema, still quite a formidable team. And all you're asking them is to win a game featuring fewer than 4 goals, which I think is more than potentially possible. So yeah, I'm not a fan of Australia at all, as you probably already realised. And France are still, third favourites in the betting for a reason. So I expect them to win. Backing them to win and under 3.5 goals just allows you a collection of correct scores on your side. So yeah, it's 2.02, I believe.
Yep, 2.02 that we have France, and under 3.5 is the bet for Mark. So Adrian, take it away with yours. Very similar line here, and France to win to nil, or both teams to score. You'll find this on Matchbook 1.87.
Yep, just been talking about this. Yeah, much like Mark, don't fancy the Aussies at all. I don't think they can lay a glove on France in this game. Very, very limited side, not full of goals at all, and yeah, France at centre back are just immense. Yeah, even if Hugo Lloris is a slight weakness behind them, I think it'd be very well protected here. I expect France to be dominant. I expect them to cruise to a comfortable win, whether that's 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 or more. We'll have to wait and see, but I can't see them not winning, and I can't see the Australia scoring either. So yeah, 1.87, double that up. That's very nice.
Yeah. It'd be 3.74. So all you have to do, guys, is enter the bonus code podcast. Just pick the guy's selection, and we'll do the rest in terms of topping up your winnings. We're done, and we will try and keep these around 40-50 minutes. You can excuse our excitement this time around, but there is the option of Matchbook Insights. As I said, they're cheat sheets. Essentially, we type up all the guys' selections. You can sign up to them via email now. That's available on the actual page itself. So go to insights.matchbook.com. But my thanks to Adrian. My thanks to Miguel. My thanks to Mark. We'll be back next Tuesday, all going well, to tackle the rest of the games group, and it becomes very hectic from there on. We will be covering every game in some capacity on the Matchbook Pod. But yeah, do like and subscribe. As we said, do comment your best bets, and we'll chat to you next week. Enjoy the football. Bye-bye.